This insightful session, Building Cultural Alignment, Navigating the Path to Successful Business Mergers, will focus on the essential elements of planning for a successful business mergers and provide practical guidance on gaining cultural alignment as well as the overall design of a merged entity. Now let me introduce Sue Viscovich. You've already probably heard Sue speak on many occasions. She's one of our favourites. And as Managing Director of Elixir Consulting, Sue and her team at Elixir have an excellent reputation for providing business coaching and consulting services to financial advisors over the past 16 years. Interestingly, when Sue agreed to present her session today on navigating the path to successful mergers, she thought that she would be only speaking from her experience in helping others to merge their businesses. However, since booking this session, Sue has put her experience to good use in her own merger experience. Well done, Sue. Elixir Consulting has just recently announced that they have merged with global outsourcing group VBP to continue to create the go-to growth partner for advice firms looking to innovate and scale. So would you please join me in welcoming Sue Viscovich.
Thank you. Hi everybody and welcome. Thank you for that introduction, Julie. It's fabulous to be with you here today. I know this is the last breakout session. After this session, I will be in the Meet the Speakers session. I'll also have Brent Fairhead up on stage with me at the end of the session. If there are any questions throughout, by all means, please put them in the app. We'll also have a little Q&A at the end. And if there's anything else that you want to talk about that you may not want to talk about in front of a room full of people, you're more than welcome to come and have a chat with us then. So we do a lot of work in assisting our firms to explore mergers and acquisitions. We kind of provide that independent third party to help bring people together at a table. So the information I'm sharing with you today comes from that experience of myself and my colleagues. And I can't spot where Graham and Lana are, but there they are up the back there. Hello. So I'm bringing you this shared experience. And of course, as Julie said, now my own personal experience. And when I was putting these slides together, it was kind of interesting. I actually happened to have a conversation with the head of a large licensee who was talking about advisors wanting to merge and do these partnerships. And he kind of said it in this really throwaway kind of way, like that never works. And certainly in my experience, that is not the case. I have seen some failed mergers, but I have to say, usually, if it doesn't work, it's usually one of two reasons. Either the expectations weren't really clear from the get-go, either misaligned or not very well communicated on either party, or they didn't share the same values and culture. We've probably all known people that have tried to do a partnership and it just didn't work. But thankfully, we're actually very privileged to see firsthand a lot of very, very successful mergers. So I am going to share with you some of those common themes that we see. So for any of you in the room that are wanting to look and explore a merger, you can learn from their mistakes and make sure that it's successful. Now, if you look at the profession from an external perspective right now, you could be forgiven to think that we are completely imploding. 3,000 practices defunct. It's a really interesting stat, isn't it? But I think you and I both know that a lot of these firms that have gone defunct haven't disappeared altogether. They have sought out mergers and grown together with other firms. Yes, I know a lot of people have retired, and we know the numbers of advisors. We know that supply does not equal demand at the moment. But when we look at the advice firms that are out there, it's not everything going to pot. If you look at the bottom of this article, it says that the sole advisor practices fell from 5,781 to 3,733. So that's 2,048 of the 3,000 practices that went defunct. They were sole advisor practices. And it's not really that surprising in it. It is hard to be a one-man band in advice. I mean, look at him, bless him. He's got a back against the wall. He's trying to get everything going. He's not sure if his FDSs have gone out. He's not sure if he has to start refunding some fees. He hasn't had time to do his hair. He's got a beanie on. Looks like he hasn't eaten or slept in a little while. Anybody feels like this? One-man band. But now, of course, we say one-man band, but not every sole advisor practice is a one-man band. We got any Swifties in the room? We've got a lot more, yay! We've got a lot more Tay-Tays. The Taylor Swifts might be a sole practitioner, the solo artist, but they have this fantastic band behind them. They've got a road crew. Hopefully, they're delivering a team serviced approach to their clients, so the whole show still must go on. But even for Tay-Tay, it's not always fantastic. Yes, you can make a really good living, but it's lonely. It's really risky when you're in advice. I know Tay-Tay travels the world, but when you're an advisor in a sole practitioner practice, it's very difficult for you to really go on holiday. You also often don't have time to really look at how the band's working and how all of the latest things that you can put this amazing show on because you're so busy doing it. So the great Taylor Swifts of the sole advisor practices build quickly. They reinvest their cash flow so they can make sure that they've got really good systems and processes and they're leveraging technology. But at the end of the day, it is still the only advisor that's able to deliver the advice. So it's not surprising that we are seeing less and less sole advisor practices. We are seeing people come together to merge and create better outcomes for their clients as well as those who own the business. Now, we know it's a really interesting time in advice right now. So we know that organic growth, so I should say here, the topic of today's session is about mergers, right? So I know that those of you who are here because you want to know about mergers. That's not to say that organic growth is not a really valid alternative, but we're not talking about that today. So when we're talking about merging, we are seeing this coming together of firms, and a lot of these being more multidisciplinary firms as well, acquiring accounting, estate planning, mortgage broking and so forth to build these bigger entities. We're also seeing a lot more access to capital. I mean, you've got the external capital providers, the merchants, the AZNGAs, the Broadleafs of the world, happy to invest in firms. And actually, at the moment, I would say it's probably every second, if not every first licensee is also looking to acquire stakes in advice businesses. And why is this? Because advice businesses, well run, are incredibly fantastic investment opportunities. Sustainable profits create great businesses and great investments to make. And I think licensees are now realising the money is actually in the firms, not the licensees. But there's no shortage of capital for people wanting to grow. There's also a lot more of these similar size practices coming together and not having external equity, but creating these merged entities. So if we look at the different alternatives, it really falls into three buckets. So you're either the acquirer or you're being acquired, whether or not you stay with the firm, if it's you growing together with the people acquiring you, or whether it's an exit strategy for you, or two businesses or three or four or five similar sized businesses are coming together to merge to get the best of what they all bring. Now, I was talking to someone the other day who was kind of talking about another firm who was merging, and they were saying it's like a merger between, they were going, merger, like a merger with a fish and a shark, like a shark comes next. But doesn't necessarily mean that if it's a smaller and a larger firm, it's not a great outcome for both. And if I use an example of one of our firms that we've helped, and I'm using their name with permission, there's a group in WA called the Byfields Wealth Management. And they had 3 advisors, great firm. They've got ownership by some of their shareholders, an accounting firm, and they are running a great business. They've got lots of different branches of the accounting firm in different regional areas, and the advisors are all based in Perth, and they travel from time to time. And one of the accounting firms was located in Northam, so it's a little country town just north of Perth. It's actually not that far away from Perth. But they were finding that one of the principals was driving up there all of the time. We also had another advisor who was a single advisor practice, Luke, who had a firm called Country Financial Directions. And Luke ran a great business in Northam. He is very well known in the town, very well respected, but he's a single advisor practice, and he was really struggling under the weight of lack of systems, lack of process, not great access to back office support. So the two of these firms came together, and it's been a brilliant outcome for not only their clients, but also both parties. So Byfield's fine, one of the partners doesn't have to drive up to Northam all the time. They've got local representation. Luke, obviously, is in a much better place now. He's got a brilliant back office system that he's just plugged into, and he's getting all the support he needs. But Byfields themselves have also really benefited because Luke is now an RM. Luke has a seat at the table. He is a director, and he's bringing another level of strategic insight into the business. So it's a perfect example of, sure, a fish and a shark, but they weren't digested. It is both of them have learnt to grow together. So I wouldn't lose too much sleep about the size of who you are compared to who you might be merging with, but there's a lot of things that you want to make sure that you get right to make it work for both parties. So I'm going to do a quick poll of those in the room. Can I get you to pull your phone out, navigate to today's session, and I want you to go to the poll section. I think that's going to go live now. So let's get a sense of who is in the room. You can pick more than one of these if that applies to you. So either you're here because you're interested in selling your business, selling all or most of your business, staying long term, merging with another similar sized firms. Maybe you're looking to acquire other firms. Maybe you're wanting to buy into a firm. You're not a business owner yet, but you're wanting to do so. Or maybe there's none of the above. You're just curious and here for the jokes. I'm going to say sorry about that right now. There's not many. So yes, if you can enter who you are, you can select more than one. And then let's have a sense of the results. So who have we got? All right, only 1% of you looking at selling and exiting altogether. That's great. 49% or 50%, half of you here are looking at merging. Now, I've had a number of discussions with people over the last few days who are looking and are open to a merger, but they don't necessarily know who they might merge with. So this bit is optional. I will leave it up to you, but if you are one of the 51% looking at merging with another similar size firm or acquiring, please stand, and then you guys can look around the room. Oh, no one's comfortable to stand? No one's comfortable? Okay, all right. Oh, there's one. Okay, great, thank you. Anyway, everybody look at him and find him in the break. All right, let me do it this way then. If you are looking to merge with another firm and you haven't yet found the people that you want to merge with, either connect with me on LinkedIn, come up to the stand later, let us know who you are, reach out to me, and we may well see if we can't play matchmaker. I know that's one of the big challenges, is to find the right people to even start the conversation. Then once you find those people, and in fact, I would even say to you, if you haven't yet found your people and you don't know why you want to do this, this is going to be one of the biggest success factors. I know you've probably heard this statement from God knows how many speakers over the last few days. It's really important to know your why. In this regard, it's really important to know why you are looking at a merger. What are you interested in doing? And when you start meeting with the people that you might be merging with, understand their why. What's in it for them? What are they trying to achieve? Because as I said earlier, one of the biggest reasons why mergers don't succeed is because it's been a lack of communication or mismatched expectations of what's going to come from the engagement. So what we do is we give our firms a bit of a worksheet, and it just is a way to guide their thinking through why is it that they're doing this. What are they looking to achieve more of, and what do they want less of in their life? If you would like that worksheet, we're happy to send it to you. So just jump on that QR code and put your details in and we'll send it out to you. But it's a really good process to go through to get real clarity for yourself and also be able to share with other people. You can't see it on there, but as you get down to what you're looking for out of the exercise, we get you to have a not negotiable column and a nice to have column. And often what happens is what starts out in people's not negotiable column, after they go through a process and understand the other people and what the opportunity is, sometimes some of those not negotiables move on to the nice to haves. But sometimes there's going to be things that you absolutely will not budge on, and they're really important to you. And it's really important for you to understand what those are before you start getting excited about the opportunities, because you can get all caught up in it and the excitement's great, and then you go, oh, actually, didn't quite achieve what I wanted to. So get your clarity first. And through this process, also understand the strengths that you're bringing to the table and the strengths that you're seeking to achieve, because we can't all be brilliant at everything. it's important to understand your own shortcomings, or the shortcomings that you don't have right now that you need to build the business that you want, and list those, because that helps you look at the opportunities through the right kind of lens. Now, when you do find your people, what you want to be doing is finding people that have a really good complementary set of skills. There's a lot to be said about merging with people that are not carbon copies of yourself, because coming together means you build something bigger than yourself. But there is one thing that you absolutely want to make sure is the same between you and the people you're merging with. Who can guess what that might be? Values. Absolutely. Your values and your culture. That is something that you cannot make up. You cannot fit mismatches together. If you don't have that right, it is doomed to fail from the outset. So I can tell you also, this is the same if you are looking to sell and get out. Because if you are creating a new home for your clients, and most advisors looking to exit talk to us about, I want to make sure my clients are looked after and my staff if they're going. So if you are doing that, you're likely going to find that you're not going to get as much in your exit payment or your postponed payment as you thought, because clients might walk. But if you are staying with the business, you will be in for a world of pain if you don't get this right first off. Now, it's not always as easy as it sounds, right? So we talk about this thing of you want to get to know the person that you're going into business with, not just the persona. What do I mean by that? Well, we all have this version of ourselves that we share with the world, but it's not necessarily always everything that we are. And one of the things that really comes to light is when people are in a difficult situation, if they are having to deal with controversy or challenge, that is when you get to see the real person. In fact, there's a great book about this. Well, it's not a book, it's a quote from this book. If you haven't read Hidden Potential, absolutely recommend it. Knowing your principles doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to practice them, particularly under stress or pressure. It's easy to be proactive and determined when things are going well. The true test of character is whether you manage to stand by those values when the deck is stacked against you. If personality is how you respond on a typical day, character is how you show up on a hard day. Isn't that the truth? So how do you get to know someone's character without, punching them in the face or seeing their response? What we do when we're working through this with firms is we get them to share their personal values, and I can probably tell you I could guess at least 3 of the values. If you've got a business value statement, I reckon I could guess at least 3 of them on every single person in this room. Because that's a little bit of what we think people should be having and what we really think is important in an advice firm, but I'm talking your personal values. One of the best ways to share this is to think back on a situation that you've had in your career where your values were really put to the test. Your character was absolutely tested. Maybe a time that you would have loved to have had a confidant that you could have thrown ideas around with, and a time that you know you had to make difficult decisions. And what we do is when we get you around the table, you map out that scenario and you ask the other person to talk through it and share how they would approach it and what they would do. Now, we do this very intentionally in person, not via a survey, because the process of fleshing it out, talking about it, understanding it, talking about your perspective actually allows the other person to really understand your character. It's not only in the words that you say and the things that you say you would do, but it's how you interact and how you have that conversation. It's quite fascinating to see. I mean, we get to see this, seat to watch it all happen, but it's really helpful. And then, of course, you do that in the reverse as well. You get the other party to do a similar kind of thing. It helps you to kind of understand character a little bit better. And, of course, the other way to do it is spend a bit of social time together. Go, if they've got families, go out with family, go for a drink. Maybe don't have a drink. That tells you a bit about character as well. But do whatever you can to try and understand the other person as much as possible before making the decision. Now, people that don't really do this deep work quite often think it's surface level. It's fluffy. Values, yeah, blah, blah. Everybody talks about values. But it is really key. Now, I'm going to do a little exercise here, and I'm just going to hope that this works. So grab your phones out for me again. And there's another poll coming up for you. This will demonstrate an example how the right answer is not always black and white. So if you jump into the poll, I'm going to read this for you. It's a little case scenario. So you're in your firm, and in a file review, you discover that there was a slight delay of about 7 days between when the rollover funds for a client were received in their account and when the purchase order was placed to invest the money in your recommended portfolio. 7 days. So you didn't advise them to dollar costed average it in. You didn't really approach this. You didn't specify anything in the SOA. You know that the client's pretty hands-off, they trust you, they're not too fast, and you also know that they have enough funds to meet all their objectives very comfortably. This is not really going to hurt them if they were out of the market. You're pretty sure that the market went up in that week that they were out of it, but you'd have to do some analysis to be sure. Your SOA didn't specify, nor do your licensee standards prescribe how many days you have to get those funds invested within. So, what would you do? This one, you only get to answer one, and this one, I will not be asking you what you answered. It's absolutely confidential, so be honest. Would you check that the investments purchased match what was recommended and sign off on it? It's fine. We put them where we said we were going to put them. Would you investigate if there was a financial impact to the client for being out of the market for 7 days and then decide what to do, just depending on the dollar value? If it didn't really make much of a difference, you don't need to go back and make a big fuss. Or would you investigate, and if there was any negative financial impact, you would advise the client, you would compensate them, and you would complete the appropriate compliance reporting? So 3 options of the actions that you would take. Oh, phew, it did work. Right, not everybody answered the same thing. Couple of grey areas in there, right? There's not necessarily a right or wrong. Now, if a compliance person were in this room, maybe they would tell me otherwise. But these are the sorts of things that happen every day in advice firms where people use their professional judgment and they rely upon their values and their principles on how to make those decisions. Sometimes it happens without them knowing. Might be a staff member that just goes, oh, whoops, we'll just make that happen and no one needs to know. Sometimes it's a discussion. But this is a perfect example that not everybody is going to behave in the same way or make the same decisions. And you would want to have at least fairly high amount of comfort that the person you're getting into business with is going to think through this in a similar way as you. If you are diametrically opposed in how you would handle that, sometimes the conversation together, you can get to a really comfortable place. Other times you just go, yeah, nah, this is not going to work. I'm not going to go into business with this person. Okay, so we can turn the poll off and go back to the slides. Thank you. All right, so we talk about this process in 3 stages, right? So there's things that you want to do before you decide to merge. So let's call that your dating period, okay? So once you get through that and you decide, yes, we want to do this, and we're pretty sure this is my person, we're going to do this, then you've got what we would call your engagement period. So there's a whole bunch of things that you want to do during that period before you actually press the button, whatever analogy you want to use. And then there's a bunch of things that you want to do after you get married to make sure that this is going to be a union that will be fabulous. So let's first talk about what you want to do prior to the decision to merge. Now, first thing is obviously an information memorandum, facts, right? How much revenue you've got, who you staff, what's in the business. That's kind of what I'd call the hygiene factors. And I'm not going to really spend any time on that because there's a reason why we called this Who's Buying the Drinks. There's a reason why we called this building cultural alignment, right? So that's pretty straightforward. In our GSD lab, we will quite often help firms create their information memorandum to get their facts right. So you want to understand that before you have too many conversations. But you absolutely want to make sure before you make the decision that you're going to do this, that you have alignment on values, culture, and the purpose for the merger. That is the biggest tick that you want to get clear on. What do you want to achieve out of doing this transaction? You want to understand your clients and your value proposition. Now, by that, I'm saying if one of you has a significant business with high net worth clients and you're delivering a family office service and that's how you want to grow, and the other one's got a really significant size client book, but it's smaller clients, they are still in acquisition mode and you want to create a digital kind of experience, well, you want to know that before you start going too far down the track. At this point, before you've decided to get together, you might not necessarily go into too much detail about what's in the proposition, but you do want to at least get a fairly good sense that you're going to be similar. Clearly, you want to be clear about the vision. What are we trying to build? What's our exit strategy? Where do we want to go with this thing? I was just speaking to someone earlier today who said they tried to do a merger a couple of years ago and it didn't work because they wanted to grow and keep building, and the other one really just kind of wanted to make life easier, and they really weren't interested in doing anything different to what they were going. Pretty important that you know about that prior to getting together. You also want to share your skeletons. And what I mean by this, it's actually on the agenda when we do one of these days to get people together, is you want to be able to talk through anything that might cause a problem later on. If you've had issues in the past, it could be compliance issues, it could have been staffing issues, it could have been things that were totally outside of your control, but they were really challenging times. And if somebody didn't know that it had happened and they find out later, it's going to cause a problem. But that also kind of covers things like if you've got particular personality traits that you know drive people mad, it might be good to kind of share those to make sure that the other person's going to complement that. But being really open about the things that might make you come unstuck later. And I can definitely tell you that in itself is really helpful when you've got an independent third party helping you have those conversations. It doesn't have to be us, but if you've got somebody else that you trust, that can make that a lot more simpler and easier to digest, because it can get quite uncomfortable. We also suggest that you do personality profiling of the principals at this point. And what that does is it allows you to get really clear about who you are, about how you tend to show up, and it's good for two reasons. Number one, it helps you get to know each other and helps you understand how to communicate with one another. We all know that, some people are very verbal and they're really expressive, and other people are quite introverted and they don't necessarily talk so much. Doesn't mean that they won't get along, just means that they need to understand how to work with each other a little bit better. But the other thing that this does is it also helps you get alignment with who's going to play what role in the business. So particularly if you've got two firms coming together, and I'm going to get Brent up a little bit later to share his story, and this is exactly the case. You've got two directors that have run very successful businesses coming together. It's not going to work if they're both going to want to do exactly the same things in the business. So part of that profiling also helps them see, well, what are the strengths? Where could we be playing in order to be able to be bigger and better together rather than butting heads all the time? Important to do that before you get along. So let's say you do all that and you go, yeah, this is sounding good. I think this is going to work. Let's do this. So you move from the dating phase into the engagement phase. So you're right, let's make this happen. That is not the time to press go, because you've still got a lot more planning to do. And if you work to a really good framework, you can put all your ducks in a row before you actually press the button. Now some of you might be familiar with this. This is our business success wheel. We use this to analyse firms. We know that there's about 16 elements of an advice business that will make or break it. So we go through that in detail to help the firms map out their plan for what the business is going to look like. But there's an overlay over that that's kind of in 4 areas. So I'm just going to touch on each of those with you. Usually the most important is your people, right? So you want to make sure that you are agreeing together before you bring them together what's going to happen with your people. So what's the culture that you're wanting to build? How are you prepared to invest in that culture? Again, I've seen different businesses and different people that have very different views on this. They'll both say we want a really family-friendly culture, but then when you actually look at what that means, very, very different. So you want to get really clear on that. We talk about value seeds. So before coming together, we get the principals to agree on a high-level view of what are the business values going to be, and they're just the seeds of it. And later, when we get the teams together, which I'll talk about shortly, you help flesh out those seeds to design the true values of the firm, because everybody's got buy-in. But at least at this point, you want to agree, high-level values. And you want to think about the vibe. We talk about the vibe as the bits that you can't really put your finger on, right? What's the feel of this place? Are we going to have beers and wine in the fridge for a Friday afternoon? Are we going to do family-friendly things? It's not exactly the same as culture, but it has a big impact on what the culture ends up being. If we're managing people, how do we want them to show up? Are we going to come down really hard the minute we see any misaligned activities, or are we going to be, do it in a different way? And the roles. So prior to making the call, you've got pretty clear on what are the roles that the principals are going to play in the business. Now you want to start thinking about the roles of your people, because if you're bringing two teams together, you want to be pretty clear on who's going to be doing what. Not at too much level of detail at this point, but a fairly high level view. And you also want to think, are there new roles that you need to create? Because if you bring two businesses together to double in size, depending on what that size is, you might find that there's new things needed, like a people and culture role or somebody being responsible for the vibe, for example. So get clear on that. Then you've got strategy. Under strategy, we are thinking things like, how are we going to make our decisions in the business? What's our operating rhythm going to be for our business planning and our reviewing back on our tracking to progress? What kind of profit do we want? Now, that kind of seems like a no-brainer, but again, I've seen business owners get together where their expectations of how much they want to be taking out of the business are very different. So you want to get clear on what you're aiming towards. And also, how long you're prepared to take to get there. Because sometimes when you bring two firms together, both of them might be on, I don't know, I'm going to call round numbers. The average in our recent research, unfortunately, we're still seeing the average of firms sitting at about 24% profit. So if you're both on an EBIT of 24%, you come together, you've got some streamlining of costs, licensee fees, technology, all these sorts of things. So maybe you can get it up to a 28% EBIT pretty much straight away on day one. Maybe you're aiming for a 35%. You want to be clear on how long you're prepared to take to get there, because the decisions you make in the business, if you want to be there within 6 months, are going to be different to the decisions you make if you're happy for a longer runway. You want to understand about those growth targets, right? How are we going to achieve it? Do we want more clients per advisor? Do we want more advisors? Do we want to bring someone on in their PY? Are we going to have associates under the advisors? Be clear on those things. Pricing. At this point, you're probably not going to do an entire pricing exercise because you might not know the final costs of the business, but you at least want to be clear on the philosophy that sits behind it. Again, if one of you is really adamant about fixed fees with a value overlay and another one's really adamant about asset-based fees, the only way to go, you want to kind of figure that out before you come together. You want to be clear on your investment philosophy as well. Again, if one of you's got managed accounts and they're pretty actively managed, you've got an investment committee, somebody else believes index funds are the only way to go, have that conversation and get some alignment. And then, of course, your future ownership. How long do each of you want to be in the business? Do you want your employees to own part of the business? Are you happy to open up to an external investor? What might that look like? Now, some of these things I'm talking about, they might change over time. You know, it's not unusual for, if we pull out the business plans of firms 3 years ago compared to now, they're a little bit different because as the business grows, they see new possibilities. But when you're coming together, you at least want to know what your plan is before you press the button. The other overlay here is your systems. So what's the client experience we want to deliver? And from a system perspective, right through to how you're going to deliver advice. And systems aren't always tech, right? So how do we deliver it? If we've got an advisor, an associate, if we've got a CSM working with clients, if we're going to have the team serviced approach, how are we going to make that happen? And then, of course, your workflow processes. So do we have systems? Do we have documented processes? If two of you have already got documented processes, how are we going to bring them together? And then also thinking through the structure of the team. Are you going to have pods? Are you going to have pooled resources? Who's going to do the power planning? Who's going to do the admin? Work through those. Again, high level, really tech stack. This is one that you at least want to get a high level view of what you want to achieve from your tech stack. If one of you says, I've invested in this system and I refuse to look at anything different, again, you want to know that beforehand. Or you might get to the point of saying, we kind of know what we want out of our tech stack, but it's going to be a project that we're going to work on to find the solution. Again, know what it is. Really get your map of your entire business DNA ready. The last one is your operational. Okay, so these are the kind of day-to-day stuff. Premises, where are we going to work from? Who are we going to get licensed through? What's our name going to be? What's our brand? They're all kind of things. Again, you might not have the final decision, but know what you're looking at for it. Now, people often ask me, what about our team? At what point do we bring them into the story and let them know what's happening? My answer to that would be as soon as it is commercially viable. The sooner, the better. I've seen experiences where the advisors have gone, I don't want to put anything at risk. I don't want to unnerve them. I'll just have these conversations. And when we get to the point of being ready, then we'll talk to them. But people hear things, they see things in your diary, they see calls come through. If you haven't told them anything, they're going to start making up stories of their own. So my suggestion is bring them inside the tent as soon as you can. Obviously, understanding how much is viable to share with them, but help them understand, again, your why. Why are you looking at doing this? What are you wanting to achieve? And if it is really important to you that your people are looked after, make sure they know that when you're having conversations. Because I've seen people leave a business because they're worried that they're going to get the boot after the merger, and yet they were an incredibly important part of the merger and why they were going to come together. So share as much as you can, as quickly as you can. So all right, we've done all that. We've found our match made in heaven. This is going to happen, yay! Then you've got to negotiate the deal. Now, again, this could be a whole other session in itself, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on this other than to say you want to get the details of the deal into a term sheet before you send it off to the lawyers and get a documented legal agreement. Always send it off to the lawyers and get a documented legal agreement. Never have the same lawyer. Please make sure that you have an independent lawyer look over it on your behalf. Even if it's really amicable, even if this is the best local lady in the world and you've known them for 30 years, you'd be surprised how much can happen and how much can create the right framework when you're both coming from a level playing field and you've both had lawyers look at the agreement. I would say though, make sure you get a good lawyer to look at it, because some like to tie you up and be really clever and look how much I'm earning my value and my fees and I'm going to make all these problems, and it makes it stretch out way too long. You want a really good, pragmatic lawyer, and you want to brief them about what you're happy with and what you're prepared to accept. Obviously, there's all the things like, understand the value, how you're going to value the two businesses, what's the share allocation going to be, is there going to be a clawback, is there going to be an exit strategy if it doesn't work, all these fun things. Generally, a good lawyer is going to help you with that, but make sure you have it in a legal agreement. Whatever type of legal agreement is going to suit the entity and the structure that you're going to put together. So it's done. You've signed the deal. Again, you're going to save a lot of lawyers' fees if you get as much detail in your term sheet as you possibly can do before you go there. Now, you're getting married. You're coming together. Is anybody in the room here aware of the GGOB, the Great Game of Business? Some of you? Yeah. Our team know it, because this was something I was really impressed with that Dave did at VBP. The Great Game of Business book, essentially the premise of it is to say, train your people in business, teach them about what it means to be a profitable business and all of the things that go into it, and share your numbers, share all of the numbers, bring them inside the tent. Now, as coaches, we see different perspectives of different business owners. We are often we bring people around the table every month, we look at the numbers, we decide we help them decide what are the critical numbers that are important to them. They're usually financial, obviously profit and so forth, but there might be client numbers, there might be turnaround times. Some business owners say, I don't want my staff to know because I think they think I make too much money, or I don't want them to think that we're greedy. And usually, when people don't know, they over-assume how much money you're making. So wherever possible, we suggest share your numbers with the team, because they are a critical part of making those numbers happen. But it's really important to help them understand what goes behind the numbers. And VBP is a perfect example. Dave shares the numbers of VBP with their 1,200 staff. We're talking staff in the Philippines who may not be as educated as you and I about business, but they are now, because they're taught it and they understand the impact they make on a greater business. It's really powerful. And one of the things, the sayings that they have up there is people support what they help create. So they understand what you're trying to achieve, they'll contribute to the outcome. So then they're coming together. Bring these two teams together. Give them the very best opportunity to make a success of this thing for you, but also for their own careers. Now, with this, I generally suggest, as a team, formally, you share separately. Partner A shares their vision with their team, partner B shares their vision with their team. When you bring them together, both of you present as a united force and you share. You're going to be bringing people together that may not have worked together before. There's going to be a little bit of unrest because people are going to be going, hang on, who's doing my job over there? Are they going to get rid of me, or are they going to get rid of them? There's all sorts of thoughts going through their head. So you want to bring them together as quickly as you can. Again, share the vision of where you're going with the business. You want to build on those value seeds. Remember before I said as principles, you work out what the seeds are going to be of the business values, because ultimately it's your DNA that's going into this thing, but then work together with them, with your team, to flesh them out. We create a Living Our Values doc, which really brings to life what are the behaviours and mindsets that you want people to be demonstrating in your business to live those values. And use them as part of your staff reviews, use them in discussions with the team. So if there's ever any difficulties, you reflect back on, well, what do our values say? How should we be behaving in this way? Help them make the operational decisions. Depending on the size of your business, there's going to be some things that you want to decide with your senior leadership team, not just with the principals. So that's going to be things like, what's the workflow going to be? Who's going to be doing what in the business? What's the growth trajectory and how are we actually going to achieve this? Who's going to be looking after what clients if there's going to be a realignment? All of those operational decisions are important. And you want to make sure you're clear on who's going to do what. Remember I said before, you should profile yourselves from a personality perspective? You're going to do this now with your team. Because again, if there's different personalities at the head of the table, it makes sense to understand there's going to be different personalities in the team. And when you do that together with them, it helps you get clear on who would be best doing different roles. But it also helps them learn how to communicate with one another and understand if somebody else shows up to work and they're grumpy or they're not saying good morning to you, maybe it's not about you, maybe there's other things, and how do you learn to work together really well? Some of these things happen over time, but you can fast track them by a lot of these different techniques. So building that culture together. So you've met someone at a conference. Maybe you already know them. Maybe you've known each other for 10 years. You've been going to PD days together. You've done your little dating. You've gone, oh, this could work. You've come together. You've gone through your engagement. You've gone, wow, this is so exciting. Look at this thing that we can build together. We've got alignment, we're agreement. There's always a little bit of nervousness, but we're going to do this thing. You sign it up. You start. You get the team together. Don't have a great honeymoon and then end up on the rocks too soon. Whatever you're doing in those first 6 months is absolutely going to be critical, but then you want to put your systems and your operating rhythm in place to make sure that you keep doing this. Now, I know some of you, before coming together, you might never have even looked at half of this stuff in your own business. Maybe you don't do strategic planning. Maybe you know in theory you should have a business plan, but you can't do it and then you don't really take much notice of it. If you are going to merge with another firm and take maximum advantage of the opportunities that creates, you want to start as you mean to go on and embed these habits in your business, because you will then succeed. Even if you're not trying to take over the world, you might not want to be growing and achieving global domination, but achieve whatever it is that you're trying to build on purpose. Continue that on an ongoing basis. Now, I want to share a couple of tips with you before I bring Brent up on stage. 2 don'ts. First don't is, don't try to go to second base too soon.
Startling answer in the shocker of them all.
Danny!
Sandy! Oh, Sandy.
Danny, what are you doing? Get
Oh,
off!
Sandy, don't worry about it. Nobody's watching.
Danny, get off me!
Sandy, what's the matter with you? I thought I meant something to you.
Talk to you? You think I'm going to stay here with you in this sin wagon? You can take this piece of tin?
Don't be Danny. You might well be coming into this thing with some not negotiables, right? And there are things that you want to accept and there's things that you won't. Now, I'm not saying that you want to hide your ultimate intentions, but understand that this is a courtship. Don't be Danny. Don't try to get to home base too quickly, because you've got to get to know each other. Each of you have got different things that you want out of this relationship, and it can happen with time. The other thing that I would absolutely recommend that you don't do is be too greedy. Don't come in with a really selfish attitude, because particularly if you're coming together and you're going to work together over time, you've got to come together and get a win-win situation for both of you. And sometimes those things that you had on your not negotiable list, when you get to this point, you kind of realise, actually, I'm sweating the small stuff here. I need to look at it a little bit differently if we're both going to get what we want and make a success out of this thing. So your last do's. You do want to keep your team in the loop as quickly as you can. I can't stress that enough. You want to stay open. Don't come into it with a really fixed mindset, because sometimes the things that you want to achieve might be achievable in a different way than what you first expected. You want to keep your rose-coloured glasses off. Now, I have seen this happen a lot. How many times have you heard people say, oh, the signs were there, but I wanted it to work so well that I ignored the signs. Don't ignore the signs. See what's right in front of you. Keep your ears open about what you're looking at. Communicate well as long as you can. All the way along, be really clear. Not only on things that might make you uncomfortable. If you're starting to hear a few things like that's just not going to work for me, but also communicate about the greatness of it, the things that you really like, the positive aspects of it. Because sometimes people think they're going to keep their cards to their chest. This is a real negotiation. Just be open as much as you can and communicate. Do be prepared to compromise on some of those areas, but know your boundaries. If they are not negotiables that cannot move sideways into the nice to have, you keep them very firm and you don't bend over too far backwards, because it will come out in the end and you're not going to be happy. And be prepared to stay in your lane. Once you've agreed on what different roles you're going to have in the business, it gets hard in action because you've run a business. If you're the one that's done all of these things, it's actually really hard to stop doing that stuff, even if you have somebody else that you trust. So be really clear on what your lane's going to be and stay in it. And finally, understand what you value. So one of the things that I see come unstuck in groups all the time is where one principal takes an operational role, they might be a CEO, and the other principal is a rainmaker. Now, some firms will pay each other the same and they'll just share the profit based on the shareholding, and they value both roles the same. The one doing the operational stuff, this one could not be a rainmaker, could not grow the business, could not bring in all those clients if this one was not running it and taking care of HR and all the operational, all the boring stuff that this one doesn't want to do. This one might be brilliant at all of that stuff and they don't really enjoy the growth. Well, maybe they do and they're actually getting a bit itchy feet because they're getting bored. Be really clear about what those things look like. In another example, I've seen some where the rainmaker, they're on the same salary, but the rainmaker also gets a percentage of growth, just like they would employ anybody else in the business, with a balanced scorecard, of course, but they get a percentage of the growth, and that works for them. Now, if any of those kind of options trigger you a little bit, if you're like, oh, I don't like that, reflect on that. That's really good to know to communicate with whoever you're growing together with. Very clear on what that looks like. Now, I am going to ask Brent to come up on stage with us now. Thank you. Come and join me, Brent. I've got a few other things talking about some tips on receiving capital if you've got an external person investing in your firm, but I'm running out of time, so I would suggest if you want to get a hold of those, just hit me up on LinkedIn or send me an email. I might do a quick video to run through them with you. So this is Brent Fairhead. I'm going to read out your bio here because I don't want to miss anything. So Brent is one of my favourite clients, and yes, he knows I say that about all of my clients. So Brent has a background in accounting and financial planning. He's a specialist in self-managed super funds. When I first met him, he was managing director of a large multidisciplinary group, the Lawrence Group. Between 2003 and 2011, Brent was involved in over 6 strategic acquisitions to help his business grow from 15 staff in one office to 80 staff across 5 offices, followed by a management buyout in 2013. In 2019, while he was at the helm of Lawrence Group, he led the effective separation of the accounting and financial advice firm, where 4 of the partners then separated, spun out into 4 different businesses. He then embarked upon a growth plan that would create an advisory business with the self-managed super fund accounting, lending and financial advice needs of his clients, and then the accountants went their separate ways. Brent wanted to build a sustainable business with multiple principals with aligned values, so he merged his firm with Mark Vincent's firm, and together they now run Design Financial Advisory. They recently acquired a 50% interest in a finance broking business. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So Brent is here to share his findings from being in a larger business that's separated. He does also help a lot of his clients. I've got a lot of self-managed, self-employed clients that he helps us with, and now where he's at today. So thank you, Brent. Thank you. Grab a seat. I've actually got some questions down here and I have an iPad. So we will open it to the floor because we have such a nice, I was going to say intimate group, you're really stretched out, but we have a nice small group. So I will open it to the floor, but also if you want to ask any anonymous questions, pop them in the app. So, oh my goodness, can I stop listening to the sound of my own voice now? Brent, will you talk for me?
Sure.
So Brent, Design Financial Advisory is now your current business with Mark.
Yep.
Why don't you share with us some of the things you've achieved? It's a year now?
Yeah, it was a year, 1st July last year, so it's been 16 months, 17 months.
Yeah, great. Okay, you know what? We should do this. Let's everybody move. Let's give Brent a round of applause. And thank
No, it's
you.
been good. Yeah, what have we achieved? I think the main thing we achieved was we probably improved the culture of both businesses, what they were individually, to a combined culture that's probably, it is not probably, it's significantly better. Well, definitely for my business, Mark's was, he only had 3 staff, and they had a pretty good little culture. Ours was a bit toxic, coming out of a bigger firm that sort of had to break apart. The culture, the merger's been the best thing that's happened to us. So we've got staff telling us now they're the happiest they've ever been in a job, happiest they've ever been in the firm. So that's really good. We've also managed to rebrand and relocate our office in the first year, which was good. Did the 2 finance broking acquisitions. That was always part of our plan, but probably not as quick.
Yeah.
So we sort of, that sort of opportunity came up and it was a good fit, so we did it. And probably the last thing that we've achieved that's been really, really good was that we've brought 3 of our advisors in to own minority shares in the business as well. Because we really wanted them to share in the upside of what we're trying to create. So yeah, a lot's happened, I guess, in 16 months, and it's been really good.
Yeah, that's great.
Positive. It's been challenging and busy, but everyone's happy.
Yeah, fantastic. All right, I want to do a little exercise now in the room. Now, I know some of you are here because you're just curious. So if you don't own an advice practice, you can just hold space for the other person that you're going to talk to. So first of all, can I get you all to stand up? We'll do the same. All right, now I want to just turn to the person next to you. It might be your left or your right. I'll let you figure that out. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I want you to share with that person, if you were going to do a merger, what would be the biggest thing you would want to achieve in the next 16 months? Brent's just listed a few things that he's achieved in 16 months. I want you to talk about the biggest thing that you would want to achieve in that first period. Go. And cut. All right, stop. Take a seat. See, when you start thinking about it, it's like, oh, what can we do in 16 months? It's pretty exciting. Great. Anybody find their new merger partner? A few things you might need to step through before that. All right, so thank you, Brent. I want to take you back now to before DFA. Everything's awesome now, but you went through a really difficult time. So thinking back before you merged, I'm going to talk a little bit later about what you learnt from the Lawrence experience. But leading into this, what do you think you did or didn't do that contributed to the success?
Okay, we'll start with the positives. I mean, a lot of it was in your presentation because Sue's my business coach and we worked through this together. So that was probably a big thing. We'd brainstormed, I guess coming out of the Lawrence business, we'd brainstormed what I wanted to, what my plan was with the business. Did I want to be a sole shareholder, sole director of my firm and just continue on down that path and just sort of grow organically? But I had a big, I guess, desire to have a bit more balance in my life. So I'd been working long hours for a long time. I've got 5 kids. I've got a wife. I've got a family. I've got,
I know, right?
So I really need to. It's important for me to spend more time with them. And so it was sort of almost like, do I just plateau out and empower the team and have more time off, or do I? And that would be like what you call a high-paying job, or do I create a business that's less reliant on me and share the load and get a bit of scale? So in the end, decided on the latter. And I knew Mark. We'd sort of known each other. I flirted with a few other advisors, but in the end started dating Mark. So put it that way. That's the way it sort of eventuated. And we did. We caught up socially. We caught up in the office professionally. We shared a lot of war stories and just asked each other, what's your plan? What do you want to do? And in the end, we sort of then we engaged with you, Sue, we did an off-site day with Sue where we pulled apart the why. You know, we really got to the deep reasoning of why we would do it. And you know, the simple analogy is 1 + 1 has to equal 3 on the numbers, but also 1 + 1 has to equal 3 on the intangible stuff like the culture and everything, and you know, and then around the team structure and like what staff did he have, what staff did I have, and you know, it just was a perfect fit because he was doing everything around financials and you know, he's doing his own bookkeeping. He was doing so much stuff that wasn't really the best use of his time, and I had some people on my team that, you know, could do some of that, but they weren't at full capacity. And so in the end, a lot of the why was the main thing. We also did personality profiles, and we worked out we were the opposite strengths, weaknesses, like totally. So we were, what was her name? The lady?
Deb McQuinn.
Deb McQuinn. She said we're compatible, so that was good.
So that is through Peoplelogica profiling. Some of you might be familiar with it. It's a really good profiling system for a situation like this, but we also recommend it when you're recruiting people because, I mean, we love DISC, that's nice and straightforward, but Peoplelogica really gets under the hood a little bit more, and it also helps you understand some good questions to ask of that person to help understand one another better. So there you go.
Yeah, it was good. And then I guess we set our strategic plan of what we wanted to achieve in the first 12 months and where we wanted to go after 5 years. And sort of we then went through the business success wheel as a group. I'd already been through that in my own practice, but then we just fleshed it out together and created our own, and we saw where the gaps were and created our own plan around profit. You know, we talked about everything, whether it was dividend policy, salaries, you know, buy-sell agreement, shareholders agreement. We did all of this because, I mean, we advised clients on it, and it was good exercise to go through. We defined our lanes, like we really, you know, listed out all the different areas that he would be responsible for and what I'd be responsible for, and it seemed to, you know, there was a bit of uncertainty around how that might work, but you know, in the end, we sort of agreed in principle that we're just going to get in and navigate, you know.
Yeah.
So they're all the good things we did.
And I would say, as an external observer, you've also been really good at agreeing to disagree. So it doesn't mean that when you come together, you have to agree on everything. Sometimes there's really respectful discussion. They both present their own views and then choose together on the right outcome that's going to suit the business. So
yeah, there's been a few things we definitely didn't agree on around how, you know, portfolio management. Like each advisor's got their own view on how to manage money, how to you know, run our SMSF business. We've got an SMSF accounting business, and you know, there's a few things there, but in the end, what we just kept coming back to each other and said, look, can you just please approach it with an open mind? Like, if we're going to go into this, I understand we disagree now, can you just approach it with an open mind, hear me out, trust me on this, and I'd say, yep, no worries, and we sort of, in the end, you know, like, don't get caught up on the small stuff, you know, and we ended up agreeing on our equity split in a cafe over lunch. We sort of had shared each other's figures and everything, but we were so excited about what we could build together that we just didn't get caught up on the small stuff. I mean, I know that's not small, right? Like that's equity. But you know, yeah, it was good in the end.
yeah,
We're able to just, yeah, righto. What do you reckon? I reckon about this split. He reckons, yeah, I reckon about that split, but you know, maybe we bring it forward and adjust this and that, and I'm like, all right.
That works, yeah. And I think the success factor of that is that you both knew what your numbers were, you were both clear on the detail of it, but at the end of the day, you're both open to
we're both commercial about it too, I think.
Yeah.
It's going to be commercial.
Yeah, and I think knowing you both had some benchmarks to be able to look at in terms of what our firm's worth, because I think where I've seen this come unstuck is when people have an unrealistic view of their own value or how firms should be, that value should be calculated. And as you say, you want it to be value of 1 + 1 = 3. It depends on who's bringing what to the table as far as what that split might look like.
Yeah.
So sorry to do this, there's no PTSD I hope, but let's go backwards a little bit more. Let's start talking about the things that you've really learnt from. So if you look back at what happened in the Lawrence days when you were running that was a really big firm that ended up separating and you were all spinning out. So do you want to talk us through the lessons
Yeah.
that you took from that?
So I guess the first lesson is we were all employees of a bigger firm, and there was an opportunity to do a management buyout because we got our founding partner sold to a listed firm. For various reasons, the business started to sort of break apart. The culture started to fall apart a little bit. A few of the people at the top end resigned, and anyway, we got an opportunity to do a management buyout. So we didn't go and do the dating, I just walked around everyone's office and said, "You guys interested in buying this thing back? How much money can you come up with?" And we sort of, 6 or 7 employees just come together. We did a bit of planning around structure and everything, but we sort of just went in and we bought this thing. We borrowed a heap of money and bought it. But I guess, and it worked for a while there, but then everyone started to have different, no one communicated around what their intentions were. Everyone was a bit cagey at that level. And I was managing director, and I had all these other partners, and I guess it just got to a stage where it just took one. It was actually a trigger point. We had one partner that said, "I'm out. I just want to do my own thing." And that made us come to the table and just sort of agree on, was this, does everyone want to stay together, or are other people feeling the same way? And, in the end, another guy said, "Look, I'm sort of feeling the same way." And so we decided we were going to unscramble the egg, which is difficult to do. And we had a couple of years lead time till our lease was up. So, we worked together around, breaking the business apart. And I guess the main lesson was that we were all ended up as partners by default, and we probably didn't get to the stage of really defining, what our vision was, and did we have shared values. We tried a lot, but I think if you went out and asked everyone in that group, would you go and be in business with these people? I think you probably have some doubts and hesitation. And Mark and I did a lot more DD on ourselves, I guess, and you really got to know the part. Like we really actually we're good mates. We actually enjoy each other's company. We share the same values, and I guess that just wasn't the same at Lawrence. And and we probably didn't jump on things culturally with the team, and we let things fester. And some of that stuff around communicating well and no rose-coloured glasses. I mean, it's true. You've got to be really open at the start, and then hold each other accountable and call each other out. Yeah. Mark and I've had some robust chats since we've merged too, but it's not, they're respectful, and they reflect back on what we originally discussed, and we both respect each other's opinion.
They're really healthy conversations.
It is, it's healthy dialogue,
Yeah. Thank you, Brent. I hope that didn't hurt too much, going back on reflecting on that time. So we're going to open it up to questions. There are a few in the app, so if there's any that you don't want to ask out loud, feel free to put them in the app. So I'll start with those, and then we might throw open to the room. So, Natalia, I love this one. Have you achieved that work-life balance that you were looking for?
Not yet. I haven't. Only probably because we bit off that acquisition of the finance broker in the first year. But we are talking about it every time. Like, we're talking about it regularly. We're acknowledging that where everyone's under the pump, the staff are under the pump, and we have a 2-weekly huddle where we ask everyone to rate themselves out of 10 how they're feeling, and so we sort of know, we've got a bit of a barometer going to know how people are feeling in life and at work, and we're there to support each other. But we're all just acknowledging that we've got a lot on, but 2024 is a big year to start focusing on having a bit more time.
Yeah, and it's not unusual when you do first come together. There's so much to get sorted, right? And you can just start imagining that checklist of integration items that need to be done. But then, as you say, you then also purchased.
We did it. Well, we were having a year of consolidation, and we said after the acquisitions of the finance broker, I said to Sue and my team, I said, look, if another acquisition comes up and I even think about it, I want you to tell me to stop and go jump. And it happened. And we met with her, but I said no.
I'm so proud of you.
It was actually quite good. This is probably it's a good example. I got a call out of the blue from an advisor I'd met, and she's got a very small group of clients that she was looking to sell, and they're all quality clients, like only 30, right? And I'm like, oh, look, your timing's just terrible. Like, I've told my team I'm not doing any more acquisitions, and whilst it might be okay for us to look at this, we're probably 18 months away from being able to look at it. you know. But anyway, I said, I'll talk to my partner, but that's what I think the answer will be. Anyway, I talked to Mark, and he's just like, oh, we'll be able to do that. We'll be able to soak that up, piece of cake. That's only 30 clients. It was split them equally. And I'm like, Mark, we said we wouldn't do it. He goes, yeah, I know, but look, 30 clients. Like, I said, all right. So we met with her, and we had this meeting with her, and for an hour and a half, and then I went home that night, and I had the worst night's sleep. All I could think about, I'm just going to create more work for myself. This is not what I'd planned. I slept like crap. And at 6:30 in the morning, I got into the office, and Mark rolled in. I said, Mark, I need to speak to you, mate. I said, I don't want to do this acquisition. I said, I had the worst night's sleep, and he goes, oh, mate, I didn't sleep last night either. I don't want to do it either. I said, oh, good. So I emailed the lady straight away. I said, look, I told you that we had no chance, and I know we met and everything, and we sounded positive yesterday, but we're not. We're out.
And to be clear, that
And
really...
I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
it was a breath of fresh air. Yeah.
And it wasn't because they met and didn't like her or there were problems with the deals. It could have been brilliant, but they both went, oh, we know what we're biting off here.
Yeah,
So
no.
that was good.
So anyway,
That was good.
we're not even talking to anyone anymore about that, about acquisitions.
I'm going to hold you to that. All right, so some other questions in here. What were the finance broking multiples, and do you think it's smarter to buy in complementary services than additional financial planning work?
Yeah, I guess I'd done finance broking before. I'd managed a department in the bigger Lawrence business. It's a very complementary business. We refer a lot out, and because we used to sort of get a referral fee, because I did a lot of the work. We'd put together what a client needed around finance broking, refer it off to the broker. They'd pretty much get it delivered on a platter, and they'd do the work, they get paid, and we really got a happy client, and that's fine, but we were starting to spend a fair bit of time on it. So, and then when they removed the ability to get paid a referral fee, I guess the only way to sort of get compensated a little bit for all that work is to own part of a firm. So Mark had a broker in his office sharing some space. I'd done it previously, so we sort of agreed it was going to be part of the strategic plan. We ended up multiples anywhere between 2.5 to 3.3 times the trail book. And we're sort of paid, so we bought Lockheed's, 50% of Lockheed's business, but it wasn't going to work if it was just that. So we needed another one to bolt on to get it scalable that could have 50% shareholding each and still make it viable for him. I'd sort of sought out another person I knew was sort of looking to get out, and we sort of were able to bolt his business on. Does that answer the question? Sorry.
Yeah, I think so.
Versus buying other financial planning. Look, the challenge with financial planning, buying other books, like the good advice, it's hard to find, practices out there, I guess, that have, quality advisors that are looking to sell. I guess we'd already done that, and this was more of a trying to expand our service offering, and then we'll grow organically from there. So it was more about a strategic bolt-on and expanding our services than trying to buy more financial planning clients, because we think there's enough financial planning clients out there that we'll just get organically.
Yeah, and it's fair to say this also comes back to the vision. So you guys don't want global domination, do you?
No.
Your vision of growth is what?
Organic growth, and having pretty much we're at 20 staff across all the businesses now, and we're pretty comfortable with that level. We'll just slowly grow organically, improve our systems, and cross-sell to our existing clients, because we've got a lot of clients that do one service with us, so there's a lot of cross-pollination of services there. We don't want to build an empire. We're seriously just moving towards wanting to have an enjoyable business where we can bring a good young team through, train them, mentor them, and have them take over running it in the future.
Yeah. And there's certainly no shortage of that organic growth, and having to stop that. So it does depend on the individual and what you're trying to grow in terms of the answer to that question of acquire or organic. You touched on the systems, so the great question here, how did you actually go merging those systems and processes? It was not too bad. We sort of listed out everything that Mark was using, everything we were using, and we just sort of agreed. Both of us weren't overly happy with the systems we've got. So we're now in the stage of going, right, 2024, whilst this year of consolidation now, I think the one big change we'll have won't be to get more people or buy more business, but it'll be to try and get better back-office systems, because then we think we can create more capacity. So it was not difficult.
because, yeah, we both weren't overly excited about what we were using. Mark didn't have a task management system as such, so he adopted mine, and, you know, he was using Advisor Logic, we were using Midwinter, and it was sort of like, yeah, we just adopted.
Got the best of both.
Picked out the best of both. Yeah.
And probably a critical part to that too is that you had Maddie that pulled them together. So an ops manager that actually did the functions of it while the advisors were busy seeing the clients and integrating them. She actually ran a really great project management to pull them together. That was quite successful. Okay, so we've only got a few minutes left. Is there any questions anyone wants to shout out? I think there is one more question but is there anything burning on anybody's lips?
Up there.
At the back there.
Yeah, it is. Like we were both self-licensed, so we were both paying compliance consultants and, you know, paying the fees on licenses. So, you know, that was an easy cost saving. I think the revenue growth will probably freeing Mark up from not having to do a lot of the the non-productive or non-chargeable work that he was doing has meant he's generating more revenue in his own right. So yeah, definitely we're on target for some of the savings we were able to create, but also in terms of the capacity we were able to create in the advisors' time slots, like both of us, because we were both sort of, you know, spending a lot of time non-productive. So we've promoted one of the ladies internally to take on a lot more of those tasks, and so it's definitely playing out. Next year's budget will probably define that further. Yeah. What, sorry?
What back office systems are you using and why are you looking elsewhere?
Why are we looking elsewhere? Because we're just not... Okay, so we're using a task management system. It's called Rike. We're using Midwinter to produce SOAs. We're using SharePoint for document management. We've got multiple systems that don't talk to each other, but we don't want to go and move until we find something that we're really happy with, because we have tried this before and failed. We've tried to move to, other systems that supposedly we're going to do it better, and we probably jumped too quick on a few of those. So that's
we're going to not be named on stage.
Yeah, no, we won't name them, but we're just going to be really patient. I've been out doing demos out here with some of these. There's a lot of good money being spent on tech. I mean, I think it's coming a long way, and we just need a CRM that's going to bring together our client base in a way that we can communicate better with them. We are actually just about to launch video SOAs as well, so that's going to remove the need for Midwinter producing Word document SOAs. Like we're in the throes of about to do my first video SOA in the next couple of weeks, which is purely recording, verbally giving the advice while sharing my screen. Sorry.
I'm so sorry to interrupt this fascinating session. Oh my God, it's so good. There's so many pearls there. I mean, thank you, Sue, so much. You've got an amazing talent to unpack a really complex issue into bite-sized pieces and make it really available to everyone. So thank you so much. And Brent, thank you for still hanging in there. You went through a management buyout and didn't work, but you still went through the process of doing a merger, and that's an incredible thing. I mean, there's 13 roles in a financial planning businesses, and some people are doing at least 90% of them. So, a merger is a great opportunity to divide up the roles and grow your business. So please join me in thanking Sue and Brent for an amazing session.